Hi, I'm Hossein. In this video, we're going to model a modern kitchen from scratch. But we won't just be modelling, we'll also go through the key standards and principles of kitchen design. That way, if you're planning your own kitchen, you can create a space that's not only beautiful and functional, but also fully up to standard. Here's our plan. First, we'll create the main volumes of the space to define the overall form. Then, step by step, we'll dive into the finer details, applying the proper design standards at every stage. Before we start modelling, there's an important point we need to cover, something many people overlook in kitchen design. A kitchen isn't just a set of cabinets, it's a functional system designed around ergonomics and workflow. Typically, a kitchen is divided into 4 main zones: storage, preparation, cleaning, and cooking. This sequence follows the actual cooking process. Taking ingredients, preparing them, cleaning, and finally, cooking. The key thing to know is that most of the user's time is spent in the preparation zone, so this zone usually sits between storage and cleaning. The sink acts as the heart of the workflow because the user constantly moves back to it throughout the process. In classical design, there's a well-known concept called the work triangle. The distances between the fridge, sink, and stove are arranged so that paths are short and unobstructed. Our layout today follows these principles perfectly, and the most important feature is the island. The island isn't just a workspace, it's the central hub for the user's movements. In this arrangement, the main paths between the 3 key activities, retrieving, cleaning, and cooking, are short and direct. The result? Smooth kitchen workflow without unnecessary thinking or extra steps. Now that we understand the logic behind the space, let's start building this design step by step in 3D. First, we open Rhino and go to Options and Units to set the measurement unit to centimeters. This step may seem simple, but it's very important. From this moment on, all measurements will be precise, standard, and consistent. This ensures that later on, there won't be any discrepancies or conflicts in the model's dimensions. Now, we move on to creating the main volumes. At this stage, we're not going into fine details yet. Our goal is to define the overall form of the kitchen and its primary dimensions, essentially building the skeleton of the space. We start with the wall cabinets. I create a simple box that's about 3.5 meters long, aligning with the wall, 60 centimeters deep, and 90 centimeters high. I repeat this process for the remaining cabinets, so the entire cabinet front forms a cohesive unit. While doing this, we also follow the standards. The distance between the upper cabinets and the countertop should typically be 45 to 60 centimeters. In our example, it's 50 centimeters, which is still acceptable. The depth of the upper cabinets is usually 30 centimeters, and we're using the same. Next, we move to the island. I draw a rectangle with a width of 130 centimeters and a total length of the kitchen, about 350 centimeters, and then use the extrude command to turn all these lines into 3D volumes. At this stage, we're only building the basic skeleton of the kitchen. More precise elements like doors, drawers, thicknesses, and joints will be added in later steps. Now that we've created the main volumes of the kitchen and defined the overall form, it's time to move on to applying design standards and fine-tuning the dimensions. This step is crucial not only for safety, but also for user comfort, and following a few simple guidelines can completely transform the kitchen experience. First, let's focus on the counter height. The standard counter height usually ranges from 76 to 91 centimeters, but in modern kitchens, 90 centimeters is more common. This height makes working at the counter much more comfortable. Next, let's look at the distance between the upper cabinets and the countertop. This distance is usually 45 to 60 centimeters, ensuring a clear view of the work surface and enough space to work comfortably. In our model, the distance is 50 centimeters, which is still within an acceptable range. The width of the island is also very important. For enough workspace and smooth circulation, a width of 120 to 150 centimeters is generally recommended. In this project, we've set it to 150 centimeters, providing both easy movement and sufficient countertop space. Another key point is the distance from the back of the island to the opposite cabinets. This should be at least 100 to 120 centimeters to allow smooth, unobstructed movement in the kitchen. The depth of the cabinets is another important factor in kitchen ergonomics. Base cabinets are usually around 60 centimeters deep, while upper cabinets are typically 30 to 35 centimeters, providing easy access and sufficient storage space. For smooth movement in the kitchen, minimum circulation spaces must be considered. The main pathway should be at least 120 centimeters wide, allowing two people to move simultaneously. Secondary or less used pathways should be at least 90 centimeters wide. Finally, a few more practical standards to keep in mind. The sink and stove heights should align with the counter, there should be enough space for small appliances and utensils, and most importantly, the work triangle between the fridge, sink and stove must be maintained to keep paths short and energy efficient. By following these simple guidelines, you can create a kitchen that is not only beautiful but also highly functional, comfortable and safe. Now it's time to start modelling. As you can see, we begin by drawing a rectangle for the base of the cabinets. Then we use the extrude command to give it a height of 1.8 centimeters. I move this panel upward by 14 centimeters using the gumball tool so it sits in the correct position. As shown in the image, the space between this panel and the floor should be filled with another layer of wood. You can create this either with an extrude or a simple box. Both methods work, and the final result will be the same. Next, we move on to the countertop. This surface is usually slightly larger on each side, about half a centimeter more or less is completely normal. You can choose the thickness based on the material you want. In this model, I'm using 5 centimeters. I smooth the edges of the countertop with the fillet edge command to make it look more realistic. Using the same method, I create the outer panels of the cabinets. The difference here is that outer panels are usually double layered, so their thickness is doubled. For the internal dividers, I use the standard thickness of 1.8 centimeters, since they don't require double layers. All these steps are done exactly according to the reference image you're seeing. I repeat the same process for the island. First, the bottom panel with a 14 centimeter gap from the floor, then the outer panels, the internal dividers, and finally all the necessary layers and details. With these steps, the main structure of the cabinets and the island is fully established, and we're ready to move on to the finer details and functional elements in the next stages. If you enjoyed this video and are thinking about learning more, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of the new videos. By doing this, not only will you help me create more useful and diverse tutorials for you, but your support will also help the channel grow, giving me more motivation to produce content. So, if you'd like to continue benefiting from these tutorials and support the channel, go ahead and subscribe now. Now we move on to the cabinet details, where the kitchen starts to look more realistic and professional. Base cabinets typically have a depth of 60 to 65 centimeters, providing enough space for the sink, plumbing, and countertop workspace. The cabinet bodies are usually made from 18mm panels, which is the standard for this type of construction. For the oven and microwave, these two elements are often placed vertically next to each other, making them more accessible and creating a logical workflow for the user. Drawer and door divisions are generally between 30 and 60 centimeters, balancing both functionality and visual proportions. For creating the doors, I use the exact method shown in the image. First, I draw a polyline, then extrude it to the thickness of MDF or any material you prefer. A key detail here is to leave a small gap about 1 millimeter between the doors to prevent them from sticking together when opening. Then, I use the fillet edge command to soften the edges, making them look more natural and closer to real cabinets. I repeat this process for all the doors and drawers. Finally, it's important to ensure there's at least 100 centimeters of space in front of the cabinets for comfortable movement, ensuring the space remains both functional and safe. By completing these steps, the cabinet form becomes more realistic, and many of the essential kitchen design standards are now in place. This is the point where your model transforms from a simple volume into a functional and usable kitchen. Now we move on to placing the sink and stove, which is one of the most important aspects of kitchen design, as it directly affects both ergonomics and user comfort. The sink should be positioned exactly in the center of the washing zone, ensuring easy access from both sides. Typically, a 5 centimeter gap between the edge of the sink and the countertop is considered ideal to control water splashing and keep the countertop cleaner. For the stove, there should be a standard distance of 65 to 75 centimeters from the range hood. This ensures both safety and optimal performance of the hood. For this project, we'll be using pre-made models for the sink, stove, and other appliances. Simply select the model and add it to the project with a quick copy and paste. That's Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. You can download these models from various websites, and I've included the links in the video description. I'll start with the sink. I place the sink model in the desired location, and now we need to cut out the countertop to fit it. To do this, I draw a box exactly the size of the sink, and then use the Boolean difference command to subtract that part from the countertop, just like you see in the image. After the sink, I repeat the same process for the stove, oven, and fridge, ensuring that all the main appliances are properly placed and ready. Now that we've built all the main forms and details, it's time to give the model some life. At this stage, I'm adding just a simple material to make the volumes and shapes more distinguishable, making it easier to see and refine the details. To summarize today's work, we started with the overall volume, added the dimensions and design standards, defined and separated the cabinets and island, and finally placed the stove and sink in their proper positions. The goal was to help you create a modern and functional kitchen from scratch in a 3D environment while practically experiencing the core kitchen design standards. If you found this tutorial helpful and felt that this approach has assisted you, make sure to like the video and share your thoughts, questions, and suggestions in the comments. This way, I can better understand what you found most interesting and useful, and which tutorials I should prepare for future videos. If you'd like to dive into similar projects and learn more about the design principles and modelling techniques for modern kitchens, let me know. I'm always happy to hear from you and consider your suggestions. Thanks for sticking with me until the end of this video and taking the time to watch. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found the information useful. Until next time, goodbye.